Meet Frank Abagnale Jr., a 17-year-old boy who managed to fool the FBI and the entire bank system by forging checks and stealing millions. Watch to see how he does it. Frank arrives at his new school. On his first day, he encounters a bully. And as it turns out, they are in the same class. The students mistake him for the new substitute teacher because of how well dressed he is. But what he does next will shock you. Frank takes this opportunity and starts pretending to be the new substitute teacher. His parents are called to school and told that Frank has been posing as the new substitute teacher for the past week and has even organized a school trip. Shockingly, his father, Frank Abagnale Sr., finds this hilarious. Frank's family comes from wealth, but they've since faced trouble with the IRS and had all their properties repossessed. This broke their marriage, leaving Frank in the middle. Frank has to choose who he wants to live with between his mother and his father. Undecisive, the kid runs from home. Things are about to take a dramatic turn. With no place to stay, Frank uses the checkbook his father gave to him on his birthday to pay for a few nights at a hotel. But he gets kicked out a few days later because the checks keep bouncing back. But what he is about to do next will shock you. Frank notices that people with respectable titles like pilots can easily use checkbooks to pay for things without being questioned, leading him to conceive the idea of interviewing one of the retired pilots to get all there is to know about pilots. Impressed by the kid's effervescent enthusiasm about pilots, he lets him have his expired FAA license. And Frank uses the ID number to order a pilot's suit. He walks in the streets wearing it and breaks a few necks. Finally, Frank manages to cash his first counterfeit check at the bank, marking his fraudulent journey. Frank writes letters to his father telling him about his new life. Frank becomes a master of forgery, unstoppable with his skills. Meanwhile, the FBI starts to catch on to the counterfeit checks. But they haven't quite yet figured out the culprit. In the meantime, Frank calls and invites his father to celebrate his success, and gives him a box which contains a key to a 1965 Cadillac. Unfortunately, his father can't accept it because he is still indebted to the IRS. Frank is still convinced that if he can make enough money to get his father out of debt and get his family back on their feet, that this could fix his parents' marriage. Meanwhile, the FBI is closing in. Carl, the FBI agent, catches Frank in his hotel room, but Frank remains calm and poses as a Secret Service agent, also investigating the culprit. Carl asks for credentials, and Frank very calmly hands him his wallet and makes up a story about how the culprit escaped through the window. Carl buys his story, and Frank manages to escape, leaving his wallet behind. Frank's net worth keeps climbing. He buys an Aston Martin and a James Bond suit to steal the look of the legendary 007. Money gains him access to the ladies, from actresses to supermodels, but money can't buy everything. On Christmas, feeling lonely and having no one to call, Frank calls Carl, and they bond briefly. The police visit Frank's mother, who is now married to one of Frank's father's friends. The police break the news to her about his son's crimes, and she defends him, saying he is just a little boy who needs a place to stay, and she is sure it's nothing they can't fix. But her jaw is dropped when she hears that Frank stole a staggering $1.3 million. Meanwhile, Frank leads a flashy lifestyle, throwing parties every day. At the hospital, he falls in love with the receptionist. And he even proposes to the girl to fix her relationship with her parents, as she was kicked out after her miscarriage. But wait to see what he does next. Frank watches movies about doctors and decides to switch careers, from pilot to a doctor. He meets the girl's parents and easily impresses them by lying about going to law school for a year before switching to theatrics. The girl's father helps him to take the bar and come work for him as a lawyer. Meanwhile, the FBI is getting closer. Carl visits Frank's father, but he refuses to give his son's location, but Carl spots a letter from Frank with his address on it. They go to his house and find a medical certificate. But unfortunately, they are too late. They reach his office, only to find it empty. But Carl is smart. He quickly figures out that Frank won't change his name now because he would lose the girl. They begin to track him. Meanwhile, Frank visits his father to beg him to tell him to stop what he is doing, but instead, his father not only condones his behavior but encourages him to never stop. At Frank's engagement party, the FBI shows up, and Frank comes clean to his wife about his real name, age, and the fact that he is not a doctor, nor did he ever go to law school, and instructs his wife to meet him at the airport in 2 days before he leaves with suitcases filled with cash. Meanwhile, The FBI are all over the airport, ready to catch Frank, but he sneaks right under their noses using the girls as a distraction. And he also pays a high school kid to wear his pilot uniform so they'd think it was him, allowing him the opportunity to escape. But, as we all know, the house always wins. Carl makes his last attempt at catching Frank. He finds him in a small town where his parents met and manages to catch him this time. And Frank is sentenced to jail, but he becomes useful to the FBI as he knows a lot about counterfeit checks, and Carl gets him a deal that gets him out of prison under the condition that he will help the FBI with counterfeit check cases. Carl becomes a father figure to Frank, realizing he's just a kid in dire need of guidance. His obsession with catching Frank stems from a place of love. Let's examine how he approached Frank's case. After capturing Frank, Carl ensures his safety and preserves his rights in a foreign country. Even when Frank faked his illness to try and escape prison, Carl still treated him like a son. He booked nice hotels before they could return Frank to his home country to face charges. Carl waited for the right moment to share news of Frank's father's passing. When Frank escaped again to see his mother and newborn daughter, Carl remained nonchalant, as if Frank were his own biological son. Even after recapturing Frank, Carl worked tirelessly to secure a deal. Frank would work for the FBI, serving his punishment while utilizing his skills for good. When Frank saw the opportunity to run away again, Carl didn't stop him. In fact, he told him right then that he is not chasing after him and he will be expecting him to show up for work on Monday. And he did. The moral of the story is that showing unwavering faith in someone can really change them for the better. Let us look at Carl's unwavering belief in Frank's potential is remarkable. He saw beyond the criminal acts, recognizing a talented individual needing direction. Carl's approach demonstrates empathy, paternal instincts, understanding, compassion, and mentorship. Frank's real father, Frank Abagnale Sr., did not show much of those qualities. In fact, he also led a fraudulent lifestyle, amassing wealth through unorthodox methods. He was not taught the importance of hard work. That is the reason why he never believed in working for things, because his father always condoned his misdemeanors. From impersonations at school to stealing from banks, Frank had a terrible mentorship from his upbringing, but at least with Carl, he gets to learn some good qualities about what it takes to make a good man. Do you ever see yourself believing in someone like Carl does with Frank? Let us know in the comments down, and thank you for watching till the end. If you like this video, check out our next video on screen.